everybody a visual representation of the bracket that we are going to be going into for top 8. I mean, once again, looking at this, you can tell that it is a stacked field of competition. We'll start with Eduardo Cunha versus Naoto Mizobuchi.
That's going to be really, really important to take that confidence into a match against the current world champion.
Well, let's get ready to send these players into game number 1 of top 8 of the World Championships. And we can see the leads for Naoto will be the Charizard and the Grimmsnarl, and Eduardo will have the Thunderous and the Shadow Rider Calyrex.
This is a very aggressive lead from Eduardo. Both Pokemon able to kind of fire out moves nice and early is going to be a big concern, and it could potentially be as well a spread of you know, how the damage is laid down, which makes the Grimmsnarl's job so much harder. Grimmsnarl, if it sees a pair of physical attackers or just one attacker with maybe a supportive Pokemon, has a really easy time just deciding exactly what to set up, be it something like the Light Screen, be it something like the Reflect. That could cause a lot of problems, so got to be respectful and very mindful of that. Of course, the Grimmsnarl set is also a mystery, and if Eduardo doesn't know about it, may be caught out by some of the antics it can get up to with that prankster ability. But in a very unsurprising turn of events, I think with a team so aggressive and a lead that's really trying to get going on turn 1, turn 2, we are going to get to look at the Dynamax, and unsurprisingly, it's the Thunderous. That, for me, confirms the set. That's a very key piece of information to give up, and you know, it's really on Naoto to play around that.
Absolutely. Most of the time when we see a Thunderous Dynamax like that, we are looking at the Defiant variant, and so we will see maybe Naoto have to play around that just a little bit to make sure that those Defiant boosts do not get activated. But Naoto as well, just going to match that Dynamax with a Gigantamax Charizard, and so we're really looking at trying to go all-out offense here for this first turn.
And both trainers want to get an early knockout and carve out that early lead, try and get the momentum going for them in the set. That's a sucker punch from the Grimmsnarl. I haven't seen that one in quite some time, and the Focus Sash means that it's able to hold on. A big item revealed already.
Yeah, I mean, the Astro Barrage, it will connect onto both Pokemon and just doing a little bit of damage here, but it's the Max Airstream follow-up that we will see from the Thunderous that will secure the knockout onto the Grimmsnarl. And now you're going to see the speed start to get going for both of these Pokemon, and so Naoto may have to match that, but also you have to get some damage out on the board.
The big thing here is the Calyrex has been taken down. Both of these Dynamax Pokemon are staying for another turn, matching the speed right there. The Thunderous still has a speed advantage though, and that's really, really big, being able to carry that one through, even though they're matched. And for Naoto, many of his speed control options on his team would lie on that Grimmsnarl. It always has access to a couple of things that can control the speed. It's really dealer's choice on which one you go with. So getting rid of that means if Thunderous can carve out an advantageous position, it's going to be really hard to take that speed advantage away. I like that both of these trainers went after, you know, the opposing supportive Pokemon essentially, you know, but it's a little bit more valuable, I'd argue, for Naoto to get rid of one of those offensive threats.
And we've seen how this Thunderous versus the Charizard plays out as well, right? Especially when the weakness policy is an item that we have seen so popularly on Charizard. That Max Lightning is not going to be enough to knock out the Charizard right away in one hit, but we've got some interesting Pokemon choices on the field now.
Well, Naoto is now very comfortable to put that Lunala onto the field. I mean, he's been able to get rid of the Calyrex. That's why he double targets it so aggressively. That's such a nice bit of game planning to say, at some point, I can potentially just win the game with the Lunala. The Lunala can get up to another fun set of tricks as well. Access to that Meteor Beam is going to be quite uncomfortable for our friend over in the side of Thunderous. And the big thing here is the Rillaboom is going to struggle to really get a lot done. You know, Rillaboom potentially carrying Fake Out, can't deal with the Charizard and can't deal with the Lunala. So here, the Rillaboom just feels a little bit underwhelming. Maybe prepping for an awkward Gastrodon, but I just don't know if it's going to be able to get involved in this game.
Well, maybe a Grassy Glide will be able to break the Shadow Shield on the Lunala, so that won't be available too. But I loved that double target from Naoto onto Shadow Rider Calyrex, because either you get the knockout or you're able to pick up the KO with the Focus Sash. So there's the Max Airstream first to go into the Lunala, and, you know, not seeing a priority move from that Rillaboom does say that it might be going for something else. And we'll see the G-Max Wildfire as well. That Rillaboom has to be able to take this to be able to keep getting some value, and it will pretty comfortably.
Yeah, Rillaboom taking that definitely something that, Naoto was not expecting. And there's the follow-up, revealing the knockoff. The Lunala not even afforded the opportunity to move in this game. So there is 2 threats to this Lunala on the team, and one of them was not dealt with in a timely enough fashion. There is going to be that residual damage as well, but Riddims kind of done its job here.
It has, but it does hang on, so it's able to get a little bit of recovery from the grassy terrain as well, but that does mean that it's around for another turn. So if you see something like the Groudon or the Gastrodon on the back, well, here's the Groudon now.
Well, like the Lunala coming in, it felt safe once the Calyrex had gone, but the Groudon being revealed in the back could have been a difference maker in that previous turn, and that's something Naoto has to think about going forward, right? It's like, okay, so I do know that G-Max Wildfire does a huge amount of damage, but if you bring the Sun, increase that damage, and get your solar power going, that would have been an easy knockout. I think Naoto was playing a little bit fast and loose there, felt like the Lunala was completely safe and was able to get away with it, maybe just thinking it could take the attacks, but a very respectful double up. Having the super effective knockoff was great for Eduardo there. I mean, the Rillaboom's kind of done at the end of this turn, but it could do enough damage to something like that Groudon to start causing problems. And yeah, a very respectful turn here from Naoto, just trying to get through these Dynamax turns, particularly on that Thundurus.
Right, so that, the Groudon's not going to take any Grassy Glide damage, but the Max Lightning as well, going into the Charizard, that Max Guard just going to make sure that that Charizard is able to stick around for these following turns. And also, you want to try to get rid of the Rillaboom. That's really important, too, to make sure that G-Max Wildfire is going to pick up the knockout. Making
sure that you're not dealing with Grassy Glide every single turn is really, really important there. And that just feels very safe and very smart from Naoto. To bring the Pokemon count level, actually, it's down to 2-2. It is going to be the Dynamax Pokemon and a restricted Pokemon, which obviously in the matchup with the restricted, Groudon does really, really well here. Honestly, this Groudon is probably feeling pretty good about its position on the board. Thundurus options to hit Groudon are very limited for something super effective that is going to be able to cause those problems. And then, of course, the Zacian, yes, it does get to go first against the Groudon, but assuming you get to land an attack in return, be it a Precipice Blades, be it a Heat Crash, you're going to be doing huge amounts of damage and threatening a knockout. So, yes, the Lunala did go down, but it feels like at the end of the day, once that Rillaboom's gone, that's another massive piece of Eduardo's team that this back pair can kind of just deal with it. The other thing that concerns me is if you go after the Groudon and you leave the Charizard alone, how much damage can that Charizard do outside of the Dynamax? It's obviously going to be quite a lot. You are going to get a little bit more of the G-Max Wildfire coming in between turns, and these knockouts could be coming pretty soon, so a lot of important targeting needed by Eduardo, who knows that there's not Protect. Charizard going for another one, though.
Yeah, that's huge, because that might be able to buy some time for this Groudon to get a Precipice Blades onto this Zacian. But Zacian goes for the substitute here, so taking a bit of a more defensive play as Groudon is able to go for the Precipice Blades, but it's not even going to connect. That substitute's going to stick around.
Yeah, not getting rid of that substitute is a huge momentum swing for Eduardo. The Zacian now feeling exceptionally safe, is going to be able to just land a Behemoth Blade at some point. I think the Thundurus is getting whittled down quite nicely by the G-Max Wildfire, and that's maybe something that Naoto's relying on and saying, you know what, at some point you're going to get my Charizard. That's absolutely fine, that's completely understandable, but your Wild Charge recoil is going to cause you enough problems that I can pick you up easily or let some of this residual damage take you down. The big thing, though, is the fastest Pokemon on the field right now in the Zacian, the fastest Pokemon traditionally, especially against the Groudon, is definitely feeling pretty good, but Thundurus does have those boosts. There's the Wild Charge, and yeah, Charizard has no chance of being able to take that one.
No, it is going to be knocked out, and so while we see the Thundurus take some recoil damage, it's still not going to be enough at the end of the turn for the G-Max Wildfire to be able to take it out. So the Behemoth Blade from the Zacian will connect onto the Groudon first before it gets a chance to move. It takes that fairly comfortably, but it's still within range that another Behemoth Blade should be able to knock it out. But wait, bulk up here.
I don't know if it really helps. The big thing is, you needed to get rid of that substitute at the end of the last turn. That was the big thing. Not hitting that Precipice Blades is absolutely huge, and maybe there's some other options that he could have been looking at to guarantee that knockout there onto the substitute, not the Zacian. Of course, the bulk up and the leftovers does mean there's going to be a lot of recovery on this, but now the Groudon is facing down two Pokemon that are faster than it, and it is going to definitely cause some problems.
It is, but, now that Thundurus is within knockout range, it's been a couple of turns of that Gigantamax Wildfire residual damage, but this could be enough. I'm just kind of looking now at, is there a possibility that Naoto can maybe stall out another turn if that residual damage is still available, and maybe just try to get some grassy terrain healing as well that could be able to preserve it enough with that defense boost it just got from the bulk up too.
It's going to be asked to do a whole lot, but it is the only way out for Naoto right now. The problem is, at some point, he has to make sure that he hits this substitute, and that's where the problem really comes. With that substitute taken down, things would have been looking a whole lot different for Naoto Mizobuchi, but he's in a very sticky situation, and Eduardo has played this nicely, honestly. Weaving in that substitute was so important for the Zacian. You know, kind of catching Naoto slow playing it a tiny little bit, getting that substitute up just feels really good.
Yeah, so that wildfire damage is over. So that Thunderous going up into the sky as well will be able to get the fly. It's not going to be that effective into the Groudon, but you can see as well, Naoto has been able to heal up pretty significantly from that leftovers healing as well as the grassy terrain, but both are over. So while that Thunderous is still going to be able to hang around, Zacian can go for another attack. This bulk up not looking nearly as promising as what it did before, as it's not even going to hang on. That is a knockout. And so Eduardo Cunha will take game number 1 of this series.
Just not getting the Precipice Blades to hit that substitute really was the end game wrapped up for him. You can't 2v1 with the Groudon when you're taking that much damage.
So let's see what type of adjustments Naoto may have made in this game number 2. But we're going to see that Charizard and that Grimmsnarl once again, and Eduardo is going to have the same leads as well going into this game 2.
I really don't think, honestly, the early game was the problem. It was certainly the end game for Naoto, so I don't mind that he's sticking with the leads. But of course, the Calyrex now knows about the Sucker Punch and can play around it quite wisely. Could maybe throw in a Protect, allow the Thunderous to just hit this Grimmsnarl and potentially knock it out again. Could cause a lot of problems that way. And if the Calyrex is sticking around, you definitely cannot bring in that Lunala early. That's something you just cannot do. It is an unacceptable option because it will just get knocked out very quickly. So a lot to think about. You know, the prediction is going to be huge here on turn number 1. Eduardo, I'd say, is still in the driving seat, though. I mean, the Charizard does have to play a little bit respectfully when you're facing down a Thunderous. Even though the Thunderous just went for max airstream, the Thunderous is definitely going to be cautious. I think all of them in the tournament are. Last game it was cautious of activating a potential weakness policy, and so just being wise around that and just getting a really good speed advantage early doors is so important. It then also kind of turns the screw a little bit on Naoto to say, hey, I'm getting max airstream boosts. You know what you're going to have to do? You're also going to have to get max airstream boosts.
It is going to be a little bit tougher for sure, because it does pin down the Charizard to really have to focus on the speed rather than trying to get that Gigantamax Wildfire down early. But it was definitely that mid-game, maybe seeing that Groudon switch in could have changed things a little bit, but it's a run back of how we saw these first turns go. Thunderous Dynamaxing here for Eduardo, and then of course for Naoto, we're going to see that Charizard Gigantamax.
I think what's interesting, it's a very minor detail, is the time that they took to make that turn is very different. So Naoto locked it in pretty much immediately, you know, going about, 15 seconds. Obviously Edu taking a little bit longer as well. A change up already, the Reflect from the Grimmsnarl. I think this is really important, and we'll see exactly what the Calyrex goes for. It is going to be Snarl. That's going to be a big problem, actually. That's going to start really making this Charizard's job even harder.
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, there's still the possibility that we do see it be able to boost back up that special attack once again, but, Eduardo's focus right now onto the Charizard is really important to be able to mitigate that damage and to have a bit more survivability later, potentially when it comes down to maybe Rillaboom. That could have helped out a lot with that special attack drop, but also the G-Max Wildfire is just going to get it set up really early. Calyrex, look at that, really taking that comfortably.
The Calyrex, no issue at all taking that. Of course, the G-Max Wildfire is going to start the burn as well. It is going to be easier to knock out now. It's kind of easier to lock it up with the Sash gone, right? Because you can get it with any Sucker Punch. But what's interesting there is, if you're going to lock up Calyrex with a Sucker Punch, you know it does 100% or brings it down to the Sash. I'd be very shocked if the number ended at exactly 1. Maybe getting the damage down on the Thunderous was more important, because the Thunderous was so impactful in that last game and just didn't feel threatened at any point.
But that's why I think the Reflect went up. You're mitigating the damage now that the Thunderous is going to be able to do to you with that physical damage. And Grimmsnarl, though, not even going for the Shadow Rider Calyrex. It's going to be the full Incense now, gifted over to that Thunderous in exchange for its Life Orb. So Thunderous going for the Max Lightning. Charizard's been softened up quite a bit, and so that will get knocked out.
That's very easy to deal with. And the Astral Barrage, the Max Airstream, all coming together to take that knockout early doors. I like that the the Grimmsnarl's getting more done, but the Charizard isn't getting anywhere near as much done, just getting that residual damage down nice and early. That's all it got done. At least the Thundurus is going to be caught out by that full Incense. That is a pretty big deal when the speed was a massive concern, but I still think Eduardo overall has that level of speed control, right? He has access to, you know, the Zacian, which is going to be faster than everything on that team. Thundurus, you know, causing problems. Shadow Rider Calyrex already faster than you know, most of Naoto's team, and the big concern right now for Naoto is you know, if you've got the Lunala, this is not the time for it. This is nowhere near the time to try and bring it in.
I mean, maybe you bait a switch, like maybe you bring in the Lunala and then try to make a defensive switch into something else. But now that that Charizard is gone, you're really relying on something else in the back to be able to start sweeping that damage. And here's Lunala.
I guess the Lunala play here is you lock the Calyrex out of attacking with Sucker Punches. And you know that, obviously, with the Shadow Shield and the Reflect, the Lunala's not in any danger. So that's sort of the play I'm thinking that you can take as Naoto. It does look a little bit obvious. You revealed Sucker Punch game 1. I do think that's quite a large piece of information to give over, especially when you don't win the game off it. So now, you know, Eduardo gets to play a little bit cautiously. The Sucker Punch goes and fails. So he has tried that play as Calyrex just goes Will-O-Wisp to get a little bit of damage down between turns. It's not going to be any help on the attack stat, but it does mean, you know, a little bit of tick damage every time, and taking advantage of the trick full Incense from earlier. The Lunala is able to land the Meteor Beam this time. This is looking a whole lot better from the Lunala.
Well, it will at least be able to use it right away due to the Power Herb, and it will connect, and that is a nice knockout onto the Thundurus. It was still able to find a lot of value, but this does open up some possibilities now. I mean, the Grimmsnarl, though, not being able to get the knockout here, at least Calyrex is going to be quite low, but now, also, Lunala is not at full HP.
Yep, Lunala's Shadow Shield being taken away there is a really nice way to do it. You don't get Sucker Punched, you stay on the field for the next turn. The Grimmsnarl's kind of forced to keep Sucker Punching you awkwardly, and that's definitely going to be a bit of a problem. But Zacian comes into the field, has its Intrepid Sword boost. Very unlikely, I would imagine, that there's any way to take that away. So this is going to be a full power Zacian swinging down on Naoto's side, and this Grimmsnarl probably needs to take advantage of a potential play this turn. It's so easy to avoid the Sucker Punch. You just Will-O-Wisp, and yes, if you hit, you hit. If you don't, you don't. It's not really a problem, you know. So it just feels very, very safe here. The Zacian can then, of course, you know, just follow up with something like the Behemoth Blade and take that out. But the Calyrex does have to be careful. I mean, the Calyrex is at some point going to get knocked out by the residual damage if it stays in for the next turn or so, and that's why it's leaving the field.
Preserve it for later. You know you'll have the speed advantage and that Rillaboom as well. The switch means that you're also not going for some type of attack here.
Yeah, I mean, they're not getting that attack off from Calyrex is fine. And, you know, the Rillaboom's going to cause problems. The Grimmsnarl's just been caught out again. That's a really easy way to avoid it, as Behemoth Blade will be heading over to Naoto's side of the field. Definitely a speed advantage. And, yeah, the Grimmsnarl's not getting anything done right now. It's definitely not able to do anything. So I like this Lunala, you know, staying in and just trying to get some damage back. The Moongeist Beam, after the boost from Meteor Beam, though, is definitely going to hurt and cause some problems, as Zacian is able to take it quite well, to be honest.
Yeah, but then also that G-Max Wildfire residual is just going to bring it so low. And Lunala is still not really within knockout range. You saw how much that Behemoth Blade was doing in that last turn, and it doesn't look like that would be enough, even with a damage roll, to be able to get the knockout in this next turn, unless Rillaboom has to follow it up with another attack.
Rillaboom has it in range, though, with the knockoff. That's the big problem right here is, you know, you were relying on the Calyrex to get knocked out, but between turns, and then Eduardo, to avoid the Sucker Punch and save it for later, very wisely switches it out. I do like the Moongeist Beam into the Zacian there. It obviously gets a good amount of damage down, makes it available to potentially get knocked out, but the big question is, you know, how do you deal with both the Rillaboom and the Shadow Rider Calyrex? They are going to be problems. There is a world, you know, as we saw in some of his games yesterday, when Naoto is able to you know, try and land some of these trick rooms. But, you know, the Grimmsnarl's not going to be able to do anything this turn, and Zacian's just going to go for it with the Behemoth Blade. I think this is going to be very, very close, and Lunala's fate is definitely down. Oh, he's gone after the Grimmsnarl, so forcing this endgame. What Naoto goes for here, I think, would determine the rest of the game. This is at such a pivotal turn as Grimmsnarl is gone.
Well, it's going to be another Moongeist Beam, so let's see where that targets. Because now that the Grimsnarl is gone, yeah, you don't have that support available anymore, but it's going to be into that Rillaboom. And so, once again, you are going to see a really nice, like, it's in range, but also what is in the back now for Naoto?
I mean, assuming it's the Groudon, this is certainly a sticky situation. The Reflect is also gone, so the Behemoth Blades, the Grassy Glides, the knockoffs are going to be doing even more damage than they have before. I think the Reflect has been saving Naoto in this game, and now that's gone. Obviously, when you take one of these items that you want to trick to your opponent's side of the field, you do give up, you know, being able to keep your screens for an elongated portion of the battle, and it can come back to bite you when the game goes long. The Groudon's got a lot of work to do here. Of course, the Rillaboom and the Zacian are low, but the Rillaboom's still got its grassy terrain. The Zacian's faster than it, and this Lunala, you know, could definitely cause some problems. I think if Eduardo can target correctly in the next couple of turns, he should be able to wrap this one up.
Well, Groudon, of course, also has to hit its moves, right? But Rillaboom 2 does have access to priority, and that Zacian as well, very, very fast. It's going to be a really close one, I feel like, just to see how these Pokemon are trained and how they're going to be able to survive.
The big thing in that last turn as well is, you know, going for the Moongeist Beam, trying to get that damage down on the Rillaboom makes a lot of sense. But, you know, not being able to, you know, really get there with a Trick Room does mean you're going to have to take 2 attacks before anything happens. Zacian following up on a Grassy Glide with a Behemoth Blade with no Reflect. The damage is definitely going to be there, and it's going to be a knockout onto that burned Lunala. So it's Groudon versus the world. Naoto's World Championship defense is on the line in the hands of one Pokemon. It's going to be Precipice Blades, and that's honestly not going to be enough on the Rillaboom. There's no residual damage, and so at the end of the day, you know, the critical hit, you needed it on the other side.
You definitely did. So that Zacian is going to go down. A little bit of grassy terrain healing will come through, but Eduardo still has that Shadow Rider Calyrex in the back and that speed advantage overall. So tough one for this Groudon to be able to get through. But the grassy terrain is still in effect. We saw that Groudon is also going to be able to protect here. Maybe that helps to buy some time to get some of that health back and hope that it's enough.
Unfortunately, I don't think it is going to be, with the Grassy Glide available for a couple more turns, with the Calyrex being faster than it. Eduardo should just be able to wrap this one up as soon as he gets to land an attack into the Groudon. A Protect is only going to buy you so much time. I really do think there had to be an early point where a Trick Room went up, and then you would have been able to play that turn a little bit differently. Yes, you'd have got caught by the Grassy Glide. Naoto's not even going to try the Protect play. He's going to give it up. And Eduardo Cunha moving back into the top 4. A repeat so far of his performance from 2016. A really fantastic performance in that game. A very good matchup for him, which he took with aplomb. There were options for Naoto, and he shut him down at every single turn.
Yeah, you can see also the emotion for Eduardo, not only getting into the top 4, but also taking down the reigning world champion. That's got to feel so good about your prospects going into the rest of the tournament.